This morning I want to discuss how to get the next value in a table or the previous value. Now, if you watched the TSQL or the TSQL video of using dynamic SQL 2, you kind of saw this already because in that video you will notice that I join the table, the common tables expression on itself, and then I select the let's see, what is it? The stock's value 365 days later, I believe it was. And so the reason why that's kind of shows you what to do is what we're really looking at is we're looking at the stock's value. Instead of getting the next day's value or the next value in a table, we're getting a value 365 days later. So for instance, if you needed to get a value every 500 rows, that would be an example of that. Depending on your where clause. But today I'm going to kind of do a more basic example just to show you how you can get either the previous day's data or the next day's data. And in this case, in this example, I'm going to use business day as the next day because we're going to be looking at stock data again. But you could use this technically, for instance, if you were trying to get the next email address, for instance. As a case in point, it doesn't have to be stock data. It could be anything, but stock data makes more sense. So instead of building like a temp table or a table, we're just going to use a common table expression here as well, kind of like our former example. And again, if you want to look at something that's just a little more complicated, you can go back to the using dynamic SQL 2 video. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the date from one of the tables. It's going to throw some type of error here. Okay, and we're going to select the price of the stock, or the price. And then we're going to select row number over, and then order by Tesla ID. And again, if you've seen previous videos, I've already used this table before. Okay, so I believe there's 598 rows in this table, and of course, I forgot to put this, but if you ever get an error message up here, or you have the red underline, and one of the quick checks you can do is see, okay, date's going to be the name, price is going to be the name. This, for instance, would not have a name to this row if I didn't put as ID, and that will cause it to have an error. So, alright, so let's just show you guys that what we're doing here is kind of, again, what we've done before, right? We have date, we have a price, we have an ID. Alright, so what we want, let's suppose that we want the date of a price, and then we want the next day's price, and then we can also demonstrate the previous day's price. But for now, let's go with the next day's price. So let's suppose that what we want to, okay, I'm going to alias it now, where CID equals 7. Okay, so we're going to be getting this price right here. So there you go. Alright, so we have April 18th, 2011. The price is 25.03. Alright, now, and again, like I said, in the previous video, you can see this too. So this isn't like something that we technically haven't done. It's just in the previous video, we did 365. So if we want to get the next day's value, we will join. Okay, and I want to do c.date and c.price. Just to show you, kind of just to show work, just like we do in math. Inner join, we're going to do the common table expression. C1 is going to be our alias on, and then c.id equals c1.id. Now notice that the table has that ID field, right? So it's going to go 1 through 598 is the last row number. And again, you can look at a previous video, but we've used Tesla data before, and you'll know that was our max value was 598. So if we join this, and it should you'll see that we have the same value, right? So what we're looking at here, and this is why we call it relationship algebra, these are relational databases, relationship algebra that they're based on, is we're trying to get the next value. So this table right here, which we're just joining it on the same table, but this right here, we want to produce the next value, right? So, and let's just, I'm going to go ahead and put the ID field just to show here. So we want the next value. So if we look at that, we say, okay, the ID is 7. We want it to be the next value. We know logically that the next value is 8. So essentially, and here's our algebra, this is 7 equals 7, right? Well, right now we want 7 equals, this value needs to be 8. This field needs to be 8. Well, the way that we can do that to make that 8 is we could say minus 1 right here. Because this would be 8 minus 1 equals 7, so 7 equals 7. But now the ID field is on 8. So, and just to show, c1.id. And now you'll notice, okay, so now we're looking at the next day, right? April 19th. Price 25.16 and the ID of 8. For instance, and in the example, I did 365 days later, which was actually 365 business days later. This, by the way, is another example of that business days. The stock data don't report on the weekends. So that shows you how you can get the next day's date. If we wanted to do 7 business days later, we could look at it 7. So the ID is now 14. Because again, it's taking this, whatever this is going to be, minus 7. If this was 7, it would be 0. But we know that the C on the first table here, the ID is 7. So 7 equals, it's going to equal 7. So whatever this value is minus 7, it's got to be double that value. So it has to be 14 minus 7. It's kind of algebraic here. Okay, so as shown, this is the next value. So think about it for a second. And I'll just pause briefly, and you can pause, or I should say you can pause the video, but it's kind of obvious how would you get the previous value. Since this value is 7, and we are trying to get the value of 6, how would you get the previous value based on this relationship algebra? Okay, so if you pause the video, again, most of you will immediately figure it out. Okay, so it's going to be the ID, so this is going to equal 7. We're trying to make this value is going to equal 7 itself. So we need this plus or minus something to equal 7. So our value, what we're trying to get the previous row would be 6, right? So this needs to be 6. So what do we need to add to 6 to make it 7? We need to add 1, the inverse, right, of what we have done. So notice now, this is 6. This is the 15th. And you can see this is over the weekend, so this would be Friday and this would be Monday or something similar to that. It could have been a holiday. And so that's how we get the previous value. So for instance, just as a case to note, usually the previous value you will add, and on the next value you will subtract. It does depend on how the data are organized. For instance, if the row number is inverted, different than this, then you might do something different. But that is generally how you will go about getting that data. So just like you saw in the dynamic SQL video 2, that's one of the things that you can do with the table. You can join it on itself, and then on the join, you can set the condition for your algebraic expression to make fields match up to get the next value or the previous value.